About 8 years ago, a girl gave me a fake phone number when I asked her out on a date. We were both riding on a city bus in my then home of Santa Barbara, and after a brief and surely awful conversation, I asked for her number. I'd been given fake phone numbers before, and I was feeling pretty suspicious as she put herself into my contacts. As soon as she handed my phone back, I immediately sent her a text message to check if she got her number right? She saw it coming though. She had just turned off her phone, at which point I understood what she had done. I was mad about it, even though I had absolutely no right to be. Thankfully, I kept that to myself and left her alone for the rest of the ride. With the benefit of hindsight, I can look back and realize how incredibly messed up that was. I didn't really understand it at the time, but looking back, I was basically intimidating her into forking over her number. In today's video, we're going to talk about what it tends to mean when a girl gives you a fake phone number. I'll give you a hint. It's usually a sign that you've made a few pretty huge mistakes, and that you've got some issues that you urgently need to work on. As part of that, we're going to look at why empathy is so hard for people with autism, how to get better at understanding your effect on other people, and how I've gone about training my capacity to use those skills. Ready? Okay, let's dive in. So the story I just told you was a social disaster from start to finish. I failed to be respectful and charming in about 15 different ways. Knowing what I do now, there must have been countless times that I should have stopped and walked away, but I didn't. I don't remember the specifics of how our conversation went, but looking back, it seems obvious that I must have basically been forcing her to talk to me. I was very interested in talking to her, but the feeling just wasn't mutual. And what's worse, she was basically trapped on the bus with me. There's a progression to meeting people, right? You make small talk, then you go a little deeper, then you exchange contact info, etc., etc. But at each step of that progression, you need to be checking to see if the other person is still engaged or interested in the conversation. If they're not, it is super important that you politely disengage and leave them be. I did not do this. With every conversational checkpoint that I blew past and ignored, she had even more reason to be afraid of me, instead of just disinterested in me. If a girl gives you a fake phone number, it's not just because she's not interested, it's because she's afraid. If she doesn't like you like that, but felt she could turn you down without concern for her own safety, she probably would have. The fact that she decided to trick you so that you would go away means that you put her in a position that made her afraid. And gentlemen, I need to take a second and be crystal clear about something. I will sometimes tell you that it can be okay to make people feel a little bit uncomfortable while you're talking to them, but this is different. If you make someone afraid without having a specific and excellent reason that you're trying to intimidate them, you've screwed up in a big way. And if we're really gonna dig into where things went wrong here, we need to take a hard look at one of my least favorite parts of autism. The main reason I treated that girl so poorly without even realizing I was doing so is because of a critical skill that I hadn't learned yet. If you're a normal person watching this video, you probably don't understand why anyone would ever behave like I did on that bus. The short answer is that one of the hardest parts about autism is how challenging it can be to have empathy. Oxford's dictionary defines empathy as the ability to understand and share the feelings of another. And while that's a fine description of how it presents to a third party, I prefer to think about empathy as a sort of mechanism. To me, practicing empathy is the act of creating a mental model for what someone else might be thinking and feeling. Understanding the emotions and internal logic that someone else is being driven by is crucial to interacting with that person effectively, and autistic people are pretty terrible at it. The fact that we suck at seeing things from another person's perspective is one of the main things that people tend to dislike about us. This lack of empathy is not a moral failing. However, you will definitely need to find a way to fake it if you want to be able to interact with other people in a way that they appreciate and enjoy. One piece of good news is that figuring out how others feel and how you might be making them feel is something that you can mostly reason through with logic, but only if you take the time to do so. I used to think that people were absolutely unpredictable, and whether or not they appreciated the things I said or did was a total crapshoot. This was me being naive for sure, but I was also being intellectually lazy, and just plain inconsiderate. As a general rule of thumb, people feel and act the way they do for reasons that can be described, examined, and thought through. It is not random, nor is it some totally unknowable thing. You really can figure out certain indicators and develop rules that will help you figure people out. When you combine the typical challenges we have with processing and producing speech, and this natural lack of empathy, there's just too much going on in our heads. When we talk to people, we are often fighting just to maintain a coherent conversation. There's no working memory left over to process how other people might be thinking or feeling. The biggest problem that comes with being overwhelmed like this is that it makes us way worse at learning how to interact with people. So much of learning is done by processing experiences in your head and then turning those experiences into knowledge that you can draw. If you're struggling just to tread water while you're making conversation, you won't be able to consider what other people are thinking and feeling very well at all. The more you think about how other people are feeling, the better you get at it. And that's why it's so important to take time and reflect on your social encounters after the fact. This is part of what therapists and other social skills counselors will do with you, but you don't strictly need them. It's something that can be done alone. Now, I have no formal training here, but one of the biggest things that I've found to help is taking stock at the end of each day by thinking about some of the people I talk to. For instance, if I called my dad to ask for something that afternoon, I might think about what he said and how his voice sounded. I might ask myself questions like, he's been inviting me to come visit more than usual lately. Is he feeling lonely? Would I describe how he sounded as tired, happy, worried? The answers to these questions might be useful to me somehow. Realistically, they usually won't be. The value is in the exercise. The more reps I can get in by thinking about other people and trying to predict their thoughts and feelings, the better I get at behaving in ways that they'll understand, appreciate, and approve of. To the point of this video, if I had noticed that that girl I was talking to wasn't enjoying our small talk, I would have stopped forcing the conversation pretty quickly. If I could tell that she wasn't interested in me as a person, I wouldn't have asked for her number. And if I had considered her feelings, I would never have tried to test the phone number she gave me to see if it worked. Guys, when it comes to people, empathy really is everything. So if you learned something from what I've had to say here, I would urge you to hit like, subscribe, and join my newsletter at the link in the description. This is yours as always, Fritz Johnson, signing off.